You are now streaming Smacking Off the podcast. You can keep up with our current activity on Facebook at Smacking Off or Smackologists. Find us on YouTube at Smacking Off the podcast. And stay right where you are. More Smacking Off the podcast is headed your way.
Hey, this is Kyle Golick of the Smacking Off the podcast. I'm at the Basketball Hall of Fame. You don't need to come to Springfield, Massachusetts. We got our own Hall of Fame analyst in Dr. Balls.
Dr. Balls is a presentation of Smacking Off the podcast.
Dr. Balls, the state of college hoops.
Welcome to the Dr. Balls segment of Smacking Off the Podcast, a Smacking Off the Podcast production with our guest host, Sean Devine.
Well, I appreciate that, Bob, but I mean, this is the Dr. Balls show and segment. I mean, so I appreciate you deferring to me, but you're our college basketball guru and expert. So, I want to defer to you on what direction we want to talk hoops tonight.
Well, since you brought it up, right, and Shannon suggested that you should be guest host, and I love Shannon's ideas. That's why I went with it. But here's what I want to talk about.
And by the way, I can never replace Shannon. He's the best host. I can't carry his championship belt of hosting. He's too good.
I think that's why we want all of our fans to know that this is a Smacking Off the Podcast production.
That's right.
Anyway, so what I want to talk about is for the first time since 2009, UConn is number one in the regular season.
Yes, they are. The rankings came out today, and we had a lot of teams lose last week. As you know, we're starting to get into the season. We're in January. We saw Purdue lose last week. Houston lost last week. Kentucky lost last week. And so I think it was the voters just said, well, UConn didn't lose, so we got to put somebody at number one. So, and they are the defending national champion. So they got 39 of the votes. Purdue right behind them at number 2 with 20 of the first place votes. Kansas got 3, and then North Carolina got 1. And I think this is my perspective. We're going to see this continue to change week by week. What do you think?
Yeah, I think we will because of the nature of college basketball, right? And there's a lot of games. There's so many good matchups. The Big East in particular is so tough. I mean, just last week, Butler beat Marquette, right? And
yeah, we didn't see that one coming.
No. And yet, just a few years ago, though, Butler had turned into a pretty good program, but their coach got snapped at the NBA. Well, that's 10 years ago maybe, but that's where these people come from. It's a little bit like college football where a coach can have a near miraculous run in the NCAA, and next thing you know, he's in the NBA or the bigger program, But yes, there's a lot of teams that's lost, and there's been some great games. I thought Butler did good against Marquette. They kept it low scoring. And then at TCU and Oklahoma, a lot of people said that Oklahoma was pretenders, and I still believe they're a good team, but not a great team. I believe they're pretenders too. They lose to TCU. I thought that was a big one. And
I will. We should add though that the Big 12, man, what a challenging conference it is this year. Wouldn't you agree?
Oh yeah, Iowa State is tough too.
Yep. Houston, Iowa State, Oklahoma, Texas isn't ranked, and Texas to me is still a pretty good basketball team. I don't think they're ranked. I'm looking at the rankings right now.
No, I don't think they're ranked.
Texas Tech just jumped in. I mean, you're talking Kansas is ranked. That's what 7 or 8 teams in that conference that could potentially go to the tournament. The Big 12 is very deep, and even when they lose Texas and Oklahoma next year, with the teams they got coming in, I still think the Big 12 is going to be very formidable as a basketball league.
Oh yeah, then you got BYU at number 20. I think that's an interesting team.
Yes,
they're very interesting team, and they and a lot of these schools, the conferences got reformed. And it's all in favor of football. but it's really worked out for basketball. The Big 12 is already a tough basketball conference, and now if in my mind, they've at least this year they've far surpassed the ACC, who traditionally seen as the best conference. So I'd have to get to the Big 12. I'm with you.
I couldn't agree with you more. It's like a lot of the moaning and groaning that we've heard regarding realignment from football has really done basketball a great service in that these leagues, the SEC, the Big 12, the ACC, the Big 10, these leagues going forward in basketball are going to be so competitive with so many teams. And then, what you'd call the mid-major conferences, they're still very good. The one shocking thing, outside of UConn being number one, first time since 2009, as you mentioned, Bob, guess who fell out for the first time in a long time of the top 25? Did you see that? Gonzaga.
Gonzaga, that's right.
Yeah, they are out, baby.
They're out. Well, just like Doug says, I mean, you got to be considered seriously, you got to play the top teams, and the last couple of years they've ramped up their off-season schedule, and I think it's kind of bit them a little bit this year.
Absolutely, and I think Few is he's missed a little on recruiting, and so they just don't quite have the talent they've had in the past. And I will give props to some of the, a rising tide lifts all boats. I'd say it's forced the other schools in the West Coast Conference to up their game, and Santa Clara, St. Mary's, and San Francisco have all put together competitive teams this year. I know they're not. I don't think any of them are ranked, but they're close. And what that's telling me is, you look at this top 25 right now. Most of these teams you could probably expect. The majority of them are going to make the NCAA tournament. But if we were to look at like 25 to 40, it's going to be a dogfight when it comes to selection Sunday of those, those last four in. Who's going to make it? Who's not going to make it? I'll give you a couple of teams that aren't ranked that are right on the cusp. You have San Diego State, you have Seton Hall, you have Alabama, Clemson, NC State, and St. John's. It's going to be a knockdown, drag-out fight to the finish through the end of the regular season and the conference tournaments to get those at-large spots.
I agree.
We know we have those auto conference teams that have to go. We're talking a conference like the Atlantic Sun Conference. They're champs in. The Patriot League, they're champs in. So even though it seems like there's a lot of at-large spots, there really isn't, is there?
And knowing what can happen is in a league like that is somebody else can upset the favorite or the ranked team in a conference like that, and then only one team might get in, and the team that went 29-7 or something is left out, right? And
absolutely, we've seen that. I mean, for example, a great example is in the America East. Usually, Vermont comes out of that conference, the Vermont Catamounts. But they've got competition from Bryant, UMass Lowell, as well as the University of Albany in their conference. And like you said, if there's an upset in their conference tournament, that's going to push out maybe an Alabama or an Indiana or a Texas Tech or one of these bigger power conference teams.
Oh, I agree, and I suggest people watch that level of basketball, and here's why: a lot of those teams play a 20-game league conference schedule, right? And so when they get in their conference tournament at the end of the year, they know each other real well because they've played additional games. They've played at least two. There's no bias per se, right? And those guys are really familiar with each other, and their conference tournaments can be off the hook, and I really enjoy them.
They're so much fun. Yeah, I mean, these kids are playing their tails off. They don't get a lot of television exposure, so when you do get a chance to watch them, I think it's fun. It's really, they're playing for the love of the game. A lot of them are, they're not one and dones as we've had. These are kids that have been there 3, 4, 5 years in their programs. And speaking of one, obviously we know Kentucky and Louisville in Bellarmine in your great state. But Bob, what's the hubbub over the Eastern Kentucky Colonels, man? They're playing pretty good basketball right now.
Oh yeah, they've been competitive in the OVC, even though they've had some down years. But Eastern Kentucky's looking pretty good, and I don't have their schedule up right now, but if they win the conference, they could make a decent run. And Northern Kentucky is actually pretty good and has been in the tournament like 2 of the last 3 years. So the whole state's competitive. But EKU, I'm kind of a little bit of a fan, even though Eastern Kentucky is the most badly named school in the country because it's nowhere near Eastern Kentucky. The Eastern Kentucky University is 10 miles due south of Lexington in the heart of Central Kentucky. It's nowhere near. It's a 2-hour drive to Eastern Kentucky from Eastern Kentucky University, right? It's a big joke if you're like me from Eastern Kentucky, right? And the only true Eastern Kentucky University is Morehead State.
Morehead State, okay.
Right.
Who else right now are you excited? Have you watched that you're feeling has a great shot?
Auburn.
Yeah.
We talked to them at the beginning of the year when they were unranked, and people were skeptical, but I knew they had the coaching, and they've got some talent and some returning players, and they've started to ramp up, and now they're smoking people.
They are fun to watch, aren't they? They play a very high tempo style of basketball. The only thing that would concern me about Auburn come tournament time is when the shots aren't falling, having to make jump shots consistently against tougher defenses. But they fly around. They play very athletic defense. They make you bring the ball up the whole court. They're physical on the boards. They get rebounds. They're playing great. Pearl's got them believing. Auburn's looking very good.
Well, now that's why I like him, Sean, because he's basically following Rick Pitino's MO when he got to Kentucky. Is they played a run and gun style. They called them Pitino's Bombinos. And when the shots fell, they beat teams that were much more talented as Kentucky was recovering from having been on probation in the late 80s. And but eventually he knew that he had to get a more balanced team and big men that could defend. And eventually when he got that together, Kentucky contended for 3 straight national championships, even though he wasn't in the last one. He obviously recruited all those guys. And that's basically what Bruce Pearl has done. When he got to Auburn, there were limitations recruiting wise, where he'd either have to take kids that had been in trouble, and in the day the transfer portal wasn't really a thing, so he'd take transfers. In those days, transfers were much more suspicious. So he's evolved since he's been at Auburn, and he proved he can coach. And now that cheating is allowed through NIL, Bruce Pearl can be more successful.
Yeah, I mean Auburn is definitely dedicated some resources to Pearl and their program, and he's gotten them to a national championship game once before. This team looks like they can make a serious run, both in the conference as well as the NC2A tournament in March. I'm going to bring up another team that I find very exciting to watch, and they're 15-2, unbeaten in their conference. The Memphis Tigers under Penny Hardaway, very exciting team to watch.
And they're really talented too. They just had a game the other day where they scored 105 points, but their opponent UTSA they scored 102. So, but they're explosive, and they play like Penny Hardaway wanted to play. Right when he was at Memphis, he wanted to be fast and penetrate and dish to wing players for open shots. And he likes a guard that's like him. It's tall and athletic and can beat his guy off the dribble, shoot it, make good decisions. And now that's what's happening for Memphis, is that the guards are starting to make better decisions. They're starting to, instead of just try to win on pure athleticism, they're playing basketball. So I'm not really a fan of Hardaway because some of the shots he's taken to other coaches like Calipari, but I'm going to give him his props. He's got a decent program. He's recruited really well, even though some of it was suspicious prior to NIL, but I got to give credit. They're an exciting program, and I think they're at least a Sweet 16 team.
Yeah, I definitely would agree with you. I see them making the tournament and definitely winning at least 2 games and maybe more. Defense, they got to tighten up a little bit on the defensive side of the ball. But man, they can score points with anybody in the country.
And that's what happened in that game. I saw some clips from that game, and I was just impressed by it. They were shooting threes off the break, right? And there's analytics involved in that, right? And one of the reasons that Memphis didn't win last year, or they're winning this year, is like you're saying, the shots are falling. So they're taking threes off the break and stuff like that. And guys are penetrating it, and they're going all the way to the hoop. And this is my problem with Memphis. And I had a similar problem with Kentucky, even though they've minimized this. So if you say the analytics says that if I shoot 4 threes, that's 12 points, it's better than me making 3 twos out of 5, which is 6 points. That's
right.
What
the analytics of the game has determined now that it's better to take that 3 versus take that mid-range 2. I
agree. But now here's the problem with it. So Calipari, with some of the point guards he's had in the past, and Memphis too, and this is why I don't believe Memphis will get past the Sweet 16, is the guard will penetrate all the way to the bucket, right? And instead of trying to draw a foul or score, which the percentages say that's the right play, right?
Yes.
They will dish it to the wing, right? And now it's a low percentage shot. Whereas if I can take you to the hole and I try to score over you, nothing but good things can happen, right? Right? You're either going to foul me, or I'm going to score, or I'm going to put up a layup, which means everybody has a chance to rebound, where I'm going to score and get fouled.
Yeah, no, I agree.
So that's a flaw in the scheme at Memphis. It was a flaw in the scheme of Kentucky, right? But I think Calipari, to his credit, has recognized that, and he's kind of turned even though they're young, he's kind of turned the guards loose, and that's why I'm high on Kentucky more so than last year. Is that even though they're young and they made some bonehead mistakes at the end of the Texas A&M game, right? They play free, man. They're playing basketball to enjoy it. See, the problem with them before is they were so scared of Calipari and scared of being yanked out of the game that they couldn't execute. They wasn't playing free, right? When you play basketball,
they were playing a little tight.
They're playing a little tight. That's right. This year they're loose, man, and he's gonna let them guys go at it, and for good reason. I mean, you got a 7-foot guy in Bradshaw can shoot it, take you to the hole. He can play low, right? And then you got Dillingham can shoot from anywhere. Then you got the number 6 player in the country, almost nobody knows about, Reed Shepherd, the son of his dad was the MOP of the 1998 national tournament at Kentucky.
Oh yeah, I remember him. What's his name? Yeah, Josh. Yeah. Oh yeah, he's got pedigree. He's playing like his dad. He's playing great.
Yet his mother was a college basketball player as well at Kentucky. And anyway, so they Reed Shepherd, his numbers are off the hook, not in terms of how many he's scoring, but how many categories that he's producing numbers in, right? And the efficiency of it. And he's an unsung player, and I'd hate to see it, and nobody expected it, but he might get drafted. And I was like, wow, And but I really love Reed Shepherd's game, man. If I was going to play point guard in the modern NCAA, I'd do it just like him. And he's using many of the same principles that I believe in. He don't take stupid shots. He's looking for guys. He shoots to make you guard him instead of to prove that he's the man. You know what I'm trying to say?
Absolutely.
So Reed Shepherd is numerically he's one of the top players in the country. His overall game is impressive to me. And then you got Reeves is a senior, and he's got great leadership. 5th-year senior, great leadership. That team's only going to get better, but they got real competition. Kansas they're tough. They're loaded from top to bottom. And then you got UConn, which has a great mix of perimeter scoring and post defense and perimeter defense. That's what I'm impressed about UConn is perimeter defense, right?
Yeah.
How quick they're getting out on guys, right? How quick they can recover, right? So that's how I beat a guy. If I can make him come out on me and he can't recover, when I deal it, my guy's gonna be wide open. Just like football, right? If the corner chooses wrong, right, and I see that and I go to that guy, if the corner can recover, he might trick me and get the INT, right? But if he can't recover, then we're going to score. So that's the game that they're playing on the outside of UConn, and I'm impressed by it.
Support Smacking Off by commenting on, liking, and sharing our videos. Stay right where you are, more Smacking Off is headed your way.
I just received a marketing plan from a freelancer on Fiverr. It's great. And the way I'll present it will really take it to the next level. Check it out. Skills.
We're developing that with a freelancer and it's excellent. It's probably my feedback that made it so good.
And you know who came up with the idea to use Fiverr? Liam. And who hired Liam? Me. Just to be clear.
Yeah, I'm very impressed with UConn's defense. They can score the ball too, don't get me wrong, but the defense creates a lot of their offensive opportunities. And when you get into the tournament, defense, we always say defense wins. It's still true in basketball. I mean, you're going to have to get a stop here and there, in the tournament. And those teams that, like you said, that the perimeter defense, they hound you, man. UConn's all over you. And they're going to be a problem come, tournament time. North Carolina's playing good defense lately. I watched a couple of their games, and as they should. The one thing they mentioned on the broadcast the other night, North Carolina is a very senior-laden team, man. Those guys have been around for a while, so it wouldn't shock me to see North Carolina make a deep run in the tournament. But let's look at the SEC. I'm looking at the SEC right now. This might be one of the years where the SEC is very deep as I look at it. Right now, the SEC in conference play has, let me see here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 teams over 500 in conference play. And I think the one shocking one that I thought was going to have a decent year was Arkansas. Arkansas is 0-3 in the conference. But, I mean, these 9 teams that are over 500, we've already talked about Auburn. We've talked about Kentucky. Let's kind of go through these teams that are over 500 that you believe in or you don't believe in. So we talked about Auburn. They're 3-0. We believe in Auburn. I believe in them. You believe in them. What about Alabama now? They struggle a little bit non-conference, but they're 3-0 in the conference. They're right there with Auburn. What are you seeing with Coach Oates' team?
I think he's tightening them guys up, man. I think that they had a little bit of turnover and some young players, and it took a while to get it together. And they had tough losses against great teams, right? Yep. And I think that's stilled them to where Alabama's going to be an effective tournament team, and they could go far. Right now, the erratic nature of having young players, right, makes you wonder. On one hand, I said, well, they really look like a Final Four team, but on the other hand, I see them make mistakes. I said, well, I hope they make the Sweet 16,
Yeah, Alabama to me, when they play fundamentally sound, I look at this team and I go, man, this team could run to the Final Four playing that way because they have the talent. But then there are other nights I watch them and they make, they're turning the ball over, they're committing too many fouls and letting the other team get to the the charity stripe. And I go, well, this team would be a round 1 or a round 2 exit. I do think they're going to the tournament for sure.
And that's what I see too, Sean, is that on defense they're just not good enough. That they have to foul in order to stop the easy play because they don't know when to recover. But they're getting better at that. Yeah,
and the other thing that Oates is focused on is rebounding. Don't let these other teams get second, third opportunities. Clear the glass, and they've done better on that. Another surprising team to me. I can't believe they're 15-1. Is Ole Miss? Ole Miss is right there. They're playing some good basketball right now. I didn't see that coming. I did not. I knew they had a decent program and some decent players, but so I'm not quite ready to be. I got to watch a few more Ole Miss games to be sold on them. But so far, 15-1, 2-1 in the conference. I'm curious to see if they can keep it going through. We know these 2 months, January, February, are like the heart and soul of the season. So it'll be interesting to see where Ole Miss finishes up.
Now, I watched them against Florida because I wanted to know more about Ole Miss because I'm intrigued by them as well. And I found it fascinating that they were much better than I thought they was, because I thought they might have just had a decent run in the preseason and they get into the conference and they might fall off, but they haven't really fell off. And the reason I was impressed with their victory over Florida is Florida has really mined the transfer portal well. And I think they're a better team that people give them credit for. I don't think they're meshing any, but they meshed as well as they should have. But what impressed me, and as we get into the season, I'm going to want to talk about players. I love players, right? And right now, players are starting to show out. And that's, for me, Ole Miss, Brakefield against Florida, he was 11-16, right? From the field.
Good night from the field.
That's a good night from the field. And Florida plays pretty good defense. So I was definitely impressed by that. And then they got a guy from Guinea, Musa Sisse, and he's got a lot of potential. If he can stay on the court, they'll go a long way. So, yes, I'm impressed by Ole Miss as well.
Now, let's talk about, and I know they're a rival, so try not to be too biased on them, but let's talk about Tennessee. I'm seeing the same problem that we've seen now for a couple of seasons. Tennessee plays great defense, and they rebound really well. They still struggle in the half court to get a shot and make a shot. They're not a good jump shooting team. They rely, getting to the foul line, getting putbacks, because they do clear the glass well on both ends of the court. But you think come SEC tournament time or even NCAA, they got to find a guy that can get a shot and make a shot. And I haven't quite seen that yet with Tennessee. What do you think about Tennessee?
I think the same thing, and I think that they haven't really had a great point guard. They've had good point guards, but they haven't really had a great point guard since Bone. That played, and they got Nick though. He's a hell of a player, but he looks kind of slow to me. I don't know. He's like Larry Bird. I mean, compared to Larry Bird, is greatness, right?
Whoa.
Yeah, but in terms of that, he looks slow, but he's still beating his guy, right?
Okay, I could see that.
He looks 30. Now, I never thought Larry Bird looked slow. I thought he was tricking people, right? And he was able to use people's body weight against them, right? So in other words, Larry Bird don't have to outrun you because he's smarter than you. So therefore, he'll take you away and let your body weight lean it one way, and then he goes the other, right?
He was great with using angles. He knew the angles and whatnot. Yeah, absolutely.
And that's a way that I've seen a little bit of that out of Nick, and I thought he was pretty good. And then Adu, he's a rebounding beast, right? So
that dude clears the boards like nobody's business. I'd love to have him on my team. He's a heck of a rebounder.
Oh, absolutely. And then, but Ziegler, he's getting better, but he just turns the ball over too much. And and that's why I said that they haven't had a great point guard since Bone, even though I do believe Ziegler has the capability. But I just don't like Coach Barnes. It's hard for me to give me credit. I feel like he was a cheater at Texas. And NIL. But on the other hand, he is a class act, and he's a good coach. And Tennessee is a team that could go to the Final Four.
To me, the most shocking team on here that's above, and we're very early into conference play, so that's the caveat. But I watched them the other day. They looked good compared to where I think a lot of people thought they'd be, and that's Georgia. Georgia's playing some exciting basketball, when I think a lot of people predicted they'd probably be at the bottom of the conference. And there's still time for that. Not that I want that to happen, but we've seen it in years past where they start out strong out the gate and then they can't quite close. Is this maybe the year Georgia can finally ascend to the upper tier of the conference in basketball? It's been a long time for them having a successful basketball season. So what do you think about Georgia?
I think Georgia can do pretty well, but I don't know if this is necessarily their year. But matter of fact, they just lost, I think, recently to Tennessee. It was a pretty tough game.
That was no pun intended, but that was a dogfight between Tennessee and Georgia.
It was a dogfight, right? And they were in it to the end, and they're opening my eyes, and I'm starting to watch Georgia, and I'd like to see some success for them, right? And it could. And I believe when teams get better in a conference, that raises the whole conference up.
Absolutely.
Just like about Gonzaga, right? And that's important for the SEC in particular because it's always been seen as a as a football conference, but conference money is going for basketball too. People say that college basketball isn't getting as much on the television contracts as the college football, but they're getting plenty, right?
Oh yeah, the conference as a whole is getting more money, and they can use some more of that money to diversify their resources to some of the other sports programs. Obviously, SEC is still the king in college football. They're the king in college baseball. Now they're starting to focus some of those resources on basketball.
Exactly.
And I think you're going to see more and more of the programs get better and better. And I think that's great. I mean, because the games are going to be better, during the course of the regular season. We talk about Georgia. I'm excited tomorrow night. Georgia's at South Carolina. South Carolina's having a decent year for their program.
Yeah, they're doing pretty good. And, since Coach Martin left, they kind of seemed like they didn't have a particular direction, or at least one that wasn't fully formed. And I think now they're getting one, and they could be a factor in the SEC tournament, and they might steal a couple big games this year. And
Absolutely. Yeah, you kind of read my mind. After Martin left, it seemed like they were kind of listless. We weren't sure what direction that program was going, and now it looks like they've kind of found their footing, and that's good. South Carolina, that's a proud historically basketball program. Even when they were independent and going all the way back when they were in the ACC, they've always loved college basketball there. So it's good to see them getting on the right foot. And then LSU's hanging around. You can't you can't discount them because they'll sneak in there and beat you.
Well, see, they've had decent recruiting and for a while, and it has to sooner or later it's going to do something. And then this is going to make the league tournament. I mean, anybody that comes out of the league tournament clearly has to be a number one seed with what's going on there. I mean,
it's escaping my mind right now. Maybe where is the SEC conference tournament being held this year?
I think it's in Atlanta.
Is it in Atlanta?
Look it up.
Yeah, let's check that real quick.
All right, let's see.
Because I know it moves around, doesn't it?
Yeah, sometimes it's in Nashville. Where is the SEC basketball tournament being held for 2024?
Bridgestone Arena. According to Southeastern Conference, 2024 SEC Men's Basketball Tournament, Bridgestone Arena, Nashville, Tennessee.
There we go.
Okay, it's in Nashville. Okay.
So that's good for Kentucky fans, right?
Yeah, it's an easy drive.
It's an easy drive. That's right. And Tennessee loves it too, but we kind of put more blue in the seats, it seems like. But it's a tough conference. But, like I said, the Big 12 is doing real well, and the Big East is doing real well. And one of the things I've always loved about the Big East is they play some college football there, but they put a lot of resources on college basketball, and really a lot of the schools focus on that because they're not really able to afford a full-blown college football program, even though that may change in the future. But so they put real resources into college basketball, and plus the TV markets are insane, right?
Yeah, you're talking all the big cities on the East Coast or in the Midwest, and to your point, I think right now in the Big East, only 3 schools play football. UConn has a program, Villanova has a program, and hopefully one of our listeners would be able to help me out who the other one is. I know DePaul, Marquette, Creighton do not have football programs. I'm not sure about Xavier or Butler, but so yeah, really their focus as far as sports is all on basketball. The one thing that's nice about the big, every year where the conference tournament's going to be. It's going to be at Madison Square Garden. That's the goal is to get to New York and win in New York. The ACC used to do that for years. It was always in Greensboro, but now they've started to move their tournament around as well. And I'm looking up where the ACC this year is going to be in DC, where the Washington Wizards play. in their arena.
I think they've had to make concessions like that due to the changing members in the conference, right? So when members come into a conference, one of the things you do to entice them is say, well, we'll move the college basketball tournament for 1 year to an area close to you or something like that. And I think that's been part of it for the ACC.
Well, the Big Ten's going to have some decisions to make next year for sure then, because you're talking going coast to coast. You got Washington on one end of that conference, and you're going to have Rutgers on the other end.
They're kind of locked into Lucas Oil Stadium, though. And
they do love that. They do love Indianapolis, don't they? Let me see. They've moved it around a couple of times. Let's see. So this year,
they've had it in the United Center. I've seen the Big Ten tournament in the United Center.
So this year they're going to play at the Target Center in Minneapolis, where the Timberwolves play. So, but yeah, I've seen it United Center. I've seen it in Indianapolis. Maybe 1 year it was in Detroit, where the Pistons play, I think.
I don't know why Cleveland kept coming to my mind there for a minute, but
Cleveland would make sense. Play at the Cavaliers Arena. There's plenty of different options for the Big Ten. And one day, hopefully, if Seattle ever gets an NBA team back, 1 year you have it out in Seattle. I know there'd be a lot of griping for the Midwest and Eastern teams. It's a long way to go, but.
Now, what's the name of that old arena that they used to play in that's like a little mini dome there in Seattle?
The Key Arena, right?
Yeah, I think that's it. My hotel, when I went through there last time, was like, it was in the parking lot of that arena. And kind of across the parking lot was that little dome. Or was that the Tacoma Dome?
I think that was. Yeah, I think you're thinking of Tacoma Dome. Yeah, it's still there. I don't know if they do any basketball there, but it's still there. It's hanging around. They still do concerts and whatnot. Speaking of things, let's key in, because we're looking at conference tournament location. The NCAA tournament sites this year.
Find us on the web at smacology.42web.io. There you can find our latest episode, or you can support the podcast by following our affiliate links at the top of the page. You can even buy some awesome Smacking Off merchandise. Again, that is smacology.42web.io.
We're here at Commonwealth Stadium, representing for the Kentucky Wildcats, right against Georgia Bulldogs, right? And I'm live here, and there's fun and excitement going on. I know you can see that. This is Smacking Off, the podcast.
Hi, we're Fiverr, a global marketplace connecting individuals and businesses with freelancers offering thousands of digital services. Graphic design, web development, video editing, e-commerce marketing. You name it, there's a professional freelancer ready to make it happen. Filter your search by the service needed, budget, timeline, and boom! Fiverr provides a list of talented freelancers to meet your specific needs. Always know what you'll pay up front. No hourly rates, just project-based pricing. And because payment isn't released until you approve the work, you can rest assured that you'll be satisfied with the quality and get exactly what you want. Our support team is always available to answer questions or offer assistance when you need it. With the whole world of freelance talent at your fingertips, what might you achieve? Join today and find out. Fiverr. It starts here.
Last year we were in Houston for the Final Four. Let's see where we're at this year.
That's what I'm looking at right now. Where are the NCAA regionals this year? So we're looking at, let's see, Dayton, Ohio for the first four.
Oh, it's always in Dayton. Yeah, that one never changes.
That never changes, but Dayton's ranked now, so I find it interesting. Of course, I don't think they'll have to have a playing game. I think Dayton's going to be in it. And then of course, the first one, you got Brooklyn at the Barclays Center. You got Charlotte, the Spectrum Center. You got Indy, obviously, Gainbridge Fieldhouse. I guess that's the Pacers' old arena.
Yep.
And then you got Omaha, the CHI Health Center.
That's where the Blue Jays play.
So Creighton is hosting the regional. I like it. I hope that they get their seed right there. I love to see teams rewarded with the home game. I know it's not fair, but I love to see it.
It'd be great, but you know what'll, I start thinking about that, and I'm looking at some of these other sites. We'll end up in Spokane, Washington.
Yeah.
It's like the ones you want to get to, you don't get. You always get the one that's far away. The regional sites.
What's that?
The regional sites are very, very interesting. So you have Boston, where the Celtics play, the East Region final will be at. Dallas, where the Mavericks play, is the South Regional. Detroit, where the Pistons play, will be the Midwest Regional. And then Crypto.com Arena, formerly known as Staples Center, where the Lakers play, will host the West Regional championship. And then the Final Four will be, I think that's going to be at State Farm Stadium, where the Arizona Cardinals play in Phoenix. So Phoenix gets the Final Four and championship Monday this year.
Well, it's great. It's a great stadium, and I'm sure they'll feel it.
The tickets every year for the Final Four get harder and harder. It's a bucket list event for anyone that loves college basketball to get to. That's next to do on my list is get there. But
so we want to see Creighton make the Final Four so you can have it all, right? If Creighton
that would be great. But I was very happy with the Elite Eight run last year. That's as far as we've been ever. So anything.
They did it with
this
hurt
year,
players. They had players out and made the Elite Eight. And almost got in the Final Four.
It was a magical run. I don't know if we'll get. I think I would be very happy with a Sweet 16 appearance this year for us. We're kind of, I don't want to quite say rebuilding, but there's a lot of questions on their bench thus far with a lot of the young guys that Max brought in. So we'll see.
And that's when they've had troubles, is when Shire or Kalkbrenner gets in foul troubles, when they've had problems.
Yes, yeah, and that's when Shireman and Kalkbrenner, they get in foul trouble and you got to go to the bench. That presents problems for us because finding someone to score the basketball. They do play good defense, I'll say that, but someone has to. You got to put the ball in the basket.
Now, is Doug paying attention? Hey, Doug, you need to pick you a game and get into it. And one that's ugly. You should watch Alabama Auburn in basketball this year. And that, in my opinion, it may not get the press.
I typically watch both of those games.
I was just saying, I think Doug usually follows Alabama. Have you been watching the Tide this year?
No, not much, but I will definitely watch Alabama Auburn both times.
Well, I don't think you sound depressed about Alabama. They're playing good basketball. They have a very good chance to win the SEC regular season title as well as tournament title.
Well, it's
so he gets disappointed. I know what Doug's deal is.
I'm a little disappointed based off of last year. I'm a little disappointed based off of last year, but I'm still paying attention. And I agree with y'all. They look like they have the potential to put it together. I still don't think they have. I think you get them against a good team, and most of the time they're going down.
I think a little bit of the disappointment is it always hurts when you lose a guy that goes, he's a top 5 pick in the NBA draft. You lose a player of that caliber. It's those guys aren't, coming in every day from high school. It's tough to get a player of that caliber for any team. Maybe not Bob. He's a Kentucky fan. You guys produce NBA players, like it's going out of style. But for the rest of us, when you lose, for me, it was 10 years ago when we had, Doug McDermott, Doug McBuckets, and he left. When he went to the NBA, we had a significant drop off because we don't have an NBA player on our team anymore.
But they had to redo how they were doing things because they leaned so heavily on him at the end of the shot clock, right? and they had to figure out who the guy was, and then that's, to me, that him leaving was the beginning of more success for Creighton, because then they started coaching more of a team style, and it's been very successful for them, and they've been getting better incrementally for 15 years, and sooner or later it's got to break through.
Yeah, it's. I agree. I prefer the team style where not one guy is always reliant to get that basket. It's, it could be any of one or two or even three guys. So this team is, to me, a little more fun to watch because anybody at any night, Alexander or Kalkbrenner or Shireman or Farabello can get you points, or Ashworth. So in team style basketball is always, to me, more aesthetically pleasing than just one guy, having to do everything.
Now, when you've got a generational player though, like McDermott, though, you've got to have your head on him.
Absolutely. I mean, he was an NBA talent. He got drafted, I think, first round by the Bulls, if memory serves. Looking at Ken Pom, here's some, like, the Ken Pom rankings are nuts. I mean, you got, some of these teams that are in the 50s, Kansas State, Miami, San Francisco, Seton Hall. These are all teams, and South Carolina's in the 60s. These are all teams that are going to be fighting for those at-large spots. So I got a feeling that when we finally hit Selection Sunday there in March, man, there are going to be a lot of teams that are on that bubble that are going to be biting their fingernails and nervous, because there's so many good teams this year in college basketball.
Now, see, with Ken Pom, though, it gives a lot of weight to strength of schedule. And since it's early in the season, a lot of teams, especially the SEC, that are, trying to build up, they play, and even Oklahoma, they play a schedule a lot of people might associate with cupcakes, right? Because they don't really know what they've got. So you don't really know what they have either, because they haven't really played anybody till they get in conference play, with some exceptions, right? So in Ken Pom, because their strength of schedule may not be that great, it's hard for them to get a high Ken Pom rating. But by the time the end of the season's come around and they've played a conference schedule, then I'm confident that, especially Kansas State. Now, Kansas State is a victim of a tough conference, but they've played gritty. Nobody's really blowing them out in general, and they're well coached, and they've made great runs in the tournament the last 3 years, including beating Kentucky 2 years ago. They beat Kentucky twice in 5 years in the tournament, if memory serves me right. And I think Kansas State is one of those teams that's underrated by the way that Ken Pom works. And,
I completely agree. I think they're not only underrated on Ken Pom, I think they're underrated, nationally. I don't think they're getting enough love. And they're 12-4. They're 2-1 in their conference. A number of teams in the Big 12 are 2-1. I mean, to me, that's a team that I would not want to run into in March.
No, because they're ugly on defense. I mean, they're ugly on defense, and they put up tremendous effort on defense.
They are. It's very hard to score on Kansas State the way they play defense. Come March, that serves you well when another team will look up and it'll show like they haven't scored a basket in the last 7 or 8 minutes. That starts to wear on a team. Like, man, we haven't gotten a basket in 6-7 minutes here in this game. So I think Kansas State's kind of one of my dark horse sleeper teams to maybe keep an eye on for the future. You got anybody like that, Doug, that or Bob, that you're saying is a sleeper? It could be any conference.
I like TCU.
TCU, I like them too. They are ranked though, so they're 19th right now in the country, sitting at 13-3. Yeah, and they've been playing some really good basketball.
And then we got Michigan State. I don't believe Michigan State is done. I mean, even though they lost a close one to Illinois, I don't believe they're done. I believe they've got real coaching, and obviously they got real coaching. I mean, he's a Hall of Famer. Izzo's a Hall of Famer.
Yeah, Izzo's a Hall of Famer for sure.
But so that's why I feel confident that Michigan State's going to at least get in the tournament. And then once they get in the tournament, when you got coaching, all bets are off. And then always then there's somebody like Loyola of Chicago or somebody like that that's going to come up and surprise everybody and energize the fans and make them excited. And that's kind of ones that you got to start looking for. When you start getting a few weeks out for the conference tournament to really look at, you start asking yourself, who are these teams that nobody's really paying attention to that can get it done? And if you go beyond the Power 5 schools, right, that you sometimes you have to dig deep, but you'll find somebody that's going to be really good. And I don't know who that is yet, to be honest with you, but I know they're out there, and that's the beauty of the NCAA tournament, right? Right now you look
Absolutely.
at it. Right now you look at it. I mean, so people hang all their hats on some of the big conference schools like Arizona, right? Yeah, Arizona's fell off a little bit. They lost to Washington State the other day.
Yep.
Right? So they put a lot of weight on teams because it's easier to figure out the rankings preseason based on the past history and the size of the school and the size of the conference, right? But it'll weed itself out, and then by tournament time we'll have a better idea. And plus consolidation of conferences, right? So Cincinnati would be considered a group of 5 school. I mean, they were Conference USA for years, and they obviously now they're in the Big 12. But Cincinnati played decent basketball most of my life, and hell, they hung with Baylor and lost. So those schools are going into the big conference because they're filling up where the football had broke up the Big 12. They sent Oklahoma and Texas to the SEC, and then they've picked up other teams. And some of these smaller schools are now parts of bigger conferences, right? Schools that might have been. And so it's changing who those schools are that's going to get a deep run, because what will happen to Cincinnati is if they don't perk up and go on like an 8-game run or something like that, they'll have to win the conference and go to the tournament, and then, which means they probably won't make it. It's unlikely they're going to beat the top teams in the Big 12 this year, that is, right, in the Big 12 tournament. But the smaller schools, those guys leaving is giving somebody else an opportunity, right?
Oh, I agree. I think it's great. I'm very excited. Very excited.
And I love to see the runs by the small schools they turn around, just like you're talking about EKU, right? That people can latch on to something like that. They're like, wow, these guys come out of nowhere, you know? And even though the Easterns won the OVC championship probably 10 times, but nobody knows or cares about the OVC anymore, right? It's all about the big conferences. So if Eastern Kentucky made a run even to the Sweet 16 in the tournament, it's a ratings maker.
Oh yeah. Anytime one of the small schools makes a little run, it's so fun, and you got to feel happy for their students, their alumni, and fans of those programs. Well, Bob, anything else you want to talk about this week? College hoops, or we just we got to keep watching? We need to get a little more data.
I think we do need to get more data. But Iowa State, I think they're coming up. And you got Florida Atlantic. We was talking about a small conference program. Florida Atlantic's doing pretty good. They're ranked number 23. And like I said, Memphis is blowing out their conference. No, they beat Wichita State by 30. They've scored. I think them and Kentucky are some of the averaging close to 90 points a game. It's impressive. And then, but they,
I would be remiss if I didn't give us who's a disappointment so far this year. And I know they probably don't care coming off the fact that they just won the football championship. But, man, Michigan, tough times in Ann Arbor for Wolverine basketball. 2-4 in conference and 7-10 overall. What's going on with the Wolverines? And do we think that Juwan Howard might be looking for a new job after this year if they don't get it turned around?
Yeah, because they've had so much success there in the past, and people were excited about Juwan Howard. And initially, he had some recruiting success, and he's been in the tournament, but they didn't really do everything that they thought they would. So I think he's going to have to produce or make a deep run in the tournament, or they're going to have to look elsewhere. And
it's been a long time since I'm looking at the standings right now, seeing Michigan all the way at the bottom of the Big Ten. That's interesting.
Oh, yeah. And the recruiting base for him is off the hook. I mean, there's plenty of players around them and around the region that they can share that with Michigan State, And Michigan State and Michigan are always fighting and recruiting. It's a battle all in its own, right? And they want them kids from Flint and obviously from Detroit and Lansing. They're tough, gritty ball players, right? And they want those kinds of kids. And I don't believe he's delivering on it. I think that he's not. I don't know if it's charisma. I don't know if it's a style of coaching. And he has a couple recruiting wins, but I don't think that he's recruited as well as expected. And it's not as much the X's and O's as it is the Jimmies and the Joes.
Oh yeah, got to have the players. Got to have the players.
I mean, just like the last couple of years in Kentucky, they had recruiting classes that other people were thought real good, and then when they got on the floor, they didn't really deliver, and they weren't really what they thought they were. They were speculative. Yet the recruiting class this year, the guys like Bradshaw that they recruited, Dillingham were, they were unbelievable. It was you could look at these guys and you knew, right? They were all airport players. They step off the plane, you're like, fuck, who's that guy? And and that's the kind of player that Bradshaw is. Unfortunately, I'm sure he's going to the NBA after this year, but I mean, Bradshaw is a transcendent talent, man. And,
I love it. I love watching him play. He's great. Great.
And so that's the difference. And he's got the Joes, right? He feels good about them, so he's let them loosen up. And they're getting better at defense as the year goes on. They've made a few bonehead mistakes because they've got young players, but so they've got the talent. But if he can just push them in a direction and keep them from making mistakes, they're going to do something. And I love it. Obviously, I'm a Kentucky fan, but what really excites me as a player, as somebody who's played a lot of basketball, is watching the small schools and seeing guys develop and seeing the cohesiveness and teamwork be so good that it overcomes talent.
Absolutely. Well, I think this is a good stopping point for us, Bob. We got to watch some more games and get some more information.
Got to reload the information, don't you?
Yeah. I mean, I think we still have too many question marks. We're only in the second week of January. We got 9 more weeks of the regular season to figure out who's really who and who isn't.
I just wanted to talk about one trap game. Obviously, as a Kentucky fan, I don't really love Indiana, but I recognize that they're Indiana. But anyway, so that's a possible trap game for Purdue. Indiana is not ranked, and they're playing at Indiana. And it's a tough. Assembly Hall's a hell of a place to play. So we could see Purdue. I'm predicting Purdue could drop one tomorrow night.
I'm going to watch it.
We'll pull this back together Sunday. So y'all have a short week to think about this.
Sounds great.
Kind of a short week. All right, guys.
All right, gentlemen. Have a good night. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you, Dad.
Thanks, Doug.